I'm bored, let's watch The Critical Drinker. Alright, so the title of this video is funny. Female action movies are dead. Girl boss fatigue killed them. So here we are blaming women because women movies are failing. This is the thing for them, right? Pick marginalized community, pick movies they've been in, pick one movie that is doing bad with that group, and then say that it's their fault the movie is underperforming. When I tell you these guys are all surface level, I'm not kidding. There are probably a dozen reasons why some movies are not performing well right now and other ones are at the top of the charts. There's probably some logical reasons that if you look at different factors, economic reasons, things like that, you could figure it out. But no, when they're speaking to the dumbest people on the internet, the dumbest viewers, the dumbest subscribers on the internet, all you have to do is say, girl in movies, too much. Girl movies now bad because girls in movies too much. Let's see what he has to say about this.
When I did my review of Ballerina a few days ago, the most obvious point of comparison was Furiosa, and it's not hard to see why. Both movies were female-led spin-offs from established male action franchises.
What does that have to do with anything? Like, women are not monolithic. Not everything that a woman does in one movie is the same thing that a woman would do in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different, 10 different movies. Like,
both starred pretty likable actresses playing well-rounded protagonists. Both came away with solid audience scores and positive critical reviews. There was no backlash, no negativity around them, no controversies or media firestorms.
So you were disproving your point already. We're 24 seconds in. Your title of this is Female Action Movies Are Dead, Girl Boss Fatigue Killed Them. So if everything except for the box office numbers has been positive when it comes to this movie, when it comes to both of these movies, since you're talking about both of them, everything was positive. People liked them. It seemed like it was something that critics were enjoying, fans were enjoying. Wasn't a lot of controversy around these films. So how is it girl boss fatigue? Wouldn't that be one of the criticisms? If girl boss fatigue was the reason why something wasn't doing well in the box office, like financially, wouldn't you see that reflected in some of the criticisms? Wouldn't fans be saying that? Wouldn't the scores be lower? Because if something is woke or something is shit, typically they'll say, look at the Rotten Tomatoes scores. Look at the score over here on Metacritic. They're all bad. But if there's been none of that, then where do you get this concept of girl boss fatigue? Now, I haven't watched his video yet, but I'm pretty sure he's going to try his best to convince you and twist your arm that girl boss fatigue is real and that it's a problem that exists in the industry, even though he himself has said here that this movie has been well received. So I'm curious how that plays into his narrative about the girl boss fatigue.
No actors shooting their mouths off.
It's Hollywood, baby.
And yet, both of them flopped at the box office. The question is, why? Well, this is where things get a bit contentious, so pay attention, dear viewer, because we're taking a deep dive into the murky world of film franchises. One of the fundamental problems that both of these films struggled with is that it's always tricky to launch a spin-off from a franchise that's so heavily based around its central character.
Which has nothing to do with Girl Boss. But starting a new spin-off franchise from an existing franchise that people love, the Girl Boss element doesn't really factor into that because that's something that a lot of franchises have suffered from over the years that have nothing to do with women as the lead characters. So this doesn't factor into the statement that he made as the title of his video.
Franchises like Star Wars or Marvel or Star Trek are bigger than any one character or story, and so they lend themselves much more easily to spin-offs and side projects. It's more about the world than the people in it. Character-based franchises are a completely different story though, because they are the selling point. In this case, both John Wick and Mad Max soon became bigger and more memorable than the actual movies they were part of. Most people would probably struggle to remember the plots for John Wick 2 and 3, but man, they remember Keanu Reeves was fucking cool, and that's what they really gravitated towards. That right there is what kept them coming back for the next installment.
It's good to know that your argument here is that the quality of the movies don't matter. Like if you extrapolate everything you're saying here, you're saying that people like these films because the lead character is cool and you won't remember anything that happened in the movies. I mean, that's not a good selling point, honestly. It's not speaking highly of art if the only thing people remember is how cool a character is in said piece of art and not what the art was itself. And this is why I always question if these fucks actually give a shit about cinema, about film. Because if they did, this would not be a good selling point. You wouldn't say this about beloved films and things that have done well in the box office that, oh yeah, you know, you don't remember anything that happened in the movie, but that character, the way he shot that gun, that was really cool. But then your argument is that that's what makes the spin-offs fail, even though arguably some of the spin-offs have had better storylines than the ones in these movies, but, you know, and more well-received sometimes than the projects they came from. But I digress. Let's continue.
Mad Max Fury Road kinda struggled with this problem because Mel Gibson had aged out of the role while the movies were on hiatus, forcing the studio to bring in a younger Tom Hardy to replace him. They more or less got away with that though, partly because the awesome action scenes compensated for it.
So is it the actor or is it the character? Is it the actor or character? Because you said the characters were doing cool things. So still not girl boss. It's literally a guy replacing a guy. And you're admitting here that that was a problem. So again, almost 2 minutes in, and you've yet to make your case about girl boss fatigue. So let's continue.
But also because there was still some kind of continuity there. Even if the actor might have changed, it was still the same character they'd come to know and love over the years. Both Furiosa and Eve from Ballerina didn't have the benefit of all that fan goodwill and attachment. They had to earn it like they were starting from scratch. They weren't piggybacking off the success of their predecessors, they had to stand on their own merits and earn it for themselves. Unfortunately, their studios didn't seem to understand this and budgeted both movies like they were mainline sequels. To put this into context, the original John Wick brought in $86 million worldwide, which isn't exactly blowing the lid off the global box office, but it didn't have to. It only cost $20 million to make, and so that $86 million haul generated a nice little profit for the studio. Ballerina, on the other hand,
waiting
is
for the
projected
girl boss
to make
stuff.
about $100 million worldwide, which would have been great news if the studio had the sense to budget it like the first John Wick. But they didn't. It cost $90 million to make, more than 4 times as much as the first movie, and so it needs to make 4 times more to turn a profit.
Nice math there. We are almost 3 minutes into a 7-minute video, and you have yet to explain the girl boss situation. Because what you're describing here exists for all films that are spinoffs. Like, they have to stand on their own. They have to build that up themselves if they're not the quote-unquote lead character of the previous film franchise. So still no girl boss elements here. And you did something similar with Furiosa where you waited until like the last 30 seconds of the video and then you tried to plead your case. You're not making a case for girl boss fatigue. That's not what you're making here. What you're laying out here is other issues in film that are causing the problem that isn't just women as the lead character. I know that's not what you're trying to do, but that's actually what you're doing here.
And clearly, it's not gonna make it. It's the same story with Furiosa. That film brought in $178 million worldwide, which would have been great news if it had cost 40 or 50 million, but it didn't. It cost 168 million. That's insane for a movie with an unproven character from a franchise that always specialized in low-budget action thrillers.
This is why they do this narrative thing where they fudge around with stuff so that you guys can follow whatever path they're trying to lay out for you. There's no fork in a road if you follow these guys. You have to follow them directly down the path.
My point here is that spin-offs generally don't generate as much interest or as much revenue as the original movies, and if both studios had been realistic about what these films could actually achieve and adjusted their expectations and budgets accordingly, they might have ended up turning a solid profit instead of being depressing flops.
But why though? Like, okay, so your argument is girl boss fatigue killed movies. So why would the movie be successful regardless? Why would it be successful regardless? What are the chances of that happening? If girl boss fatigue is what killed these films, then it doesn't matter how much money they stick into it. You would argue they shouldn't make them at all, right? I mean, if female action movies are dead, then studios shouldn't make them at all. That's the title of your video. Why even spend $5 million, $10 million on a movie if female action movies are dead? Why would you do that? And this is why when you make a statement like that, you have to back it up with something semi-realistic, something that we can like understand. Because a statement like that tells me that studios should not invest in female-led action films based on what your title is and the framing of this argument. So it doesn't matter how much they put into it. If it's a dead genre of film, then why even bother? You know what I mean?
Now, that's the business side of the equation, but there's a much bigger problem that's brought down both of these films. A cultural backlash that's been building up for years now, and has finally exploded harder than me after a particularly strenuous session with Tatiana. The fact is, audiences today are getting a bit fucking sick of girl boss movies, because they've had nothing but girl boss movies shoved down their throats for the past decade or so.
So that's reflected in the reviews for Furiosa and Ballerina, because those are the two movies you're talking about. So let's take a look here at Ballerina here. 75%, 93% fans like this. 93%. That's really interesting, because you would think that if a movie were pushing some sort of agenda that the public was retaliating against, that it would reflect in scores, because there's nothing stopping the public from giving negative backlash. How about Furiosa? Because you mentioned that one. Furiosa, 90% and 88%. So there doesn't seem to be any cultural backlash in the reception to the films. I don't remember fans screaming about this. The only people I know that talk about this in any major way is you guys. You're the only ones. So if I'm not seeing it reflected anywhere else, in articles, in editorials, in scores, in fan reception, if I'm not seeing it anywhere else, then the only reason I would take your word on this is trust me, bro. That's it. Because it's not about quality. You argued that Furiosa, and both you and Nerdrotic said Furiosa was a great movie, if I remember correctly. And I've not heard you talk about the quality of this film being negative. So my question is, if it is not about quality, and it's all about hating women because women have storylines that are empowering for them, if that's what you hate, then there's a thing called sexism and misogyny that is happening, right? I feel like that's the obvious thing we'd be talking about.
And in particular, they're sick of seeing their favourite male-led franchises getting taken over by unlikable, arrogant, abrasive, and infallible feminist power fantasies.
Well, they're not. They're spin-offs. You said that earlier. They're not being taken over. They're spin-offs. They don't include those folks in them. So that's not what this is. That's not what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with women taking over the franchises. They're spin-offs of other franchises.
Usually written by talentless hacks and embittered activists who they're commanded to like and respect simply because they've been crowbarred in to replace someone far more popular. Fan bases don't work like that. The big pop culture franchises are the most obvious and high-profile examples of this, but the truth is that it's spread to almost all facets of entertainment.
What's really funny to me is your argument is if women are the leads of something that men like, then that means they're going to reject it because it's women. Because you've not shown me an example of a non-girl boss project. Matter of fact, you said that all of the projects with women are girl boss projects recently. So you're not showing me examples of non-girl boss things in media that are successful simply because they're not girl boss. So unless you can show me examples of stuff that doesn't fit that criteria, then one could assume that you're talking about all of that media, everything with women as a lead. Because otherwise, what is the standard? What are we going on?
Like, how many times have you been told that some old movie or TV show is getting a revival, updated for modern audiences, of course,
what does that have to do with
followed
Girl
by
Boss?
sneering think pieces, decrying the
What does that have to
original
do
as
with
a
Girl
dated
Boss?
relic
Nothing.
of a less enlightened time, and fawning interviews with pretentious actors up on their soapboxes about how excited they are to bring a...
So this is more about like you hate the idea of modern audiences. The thing is, it always comes around to what the truth is. That's what it is. It's a modern audience thing. You hate that. So therefore, you are scapegoating girl bosses over a movie that was well received by critics and fans. That doesn't make any sense at all. Talking about financial failures, there's a lot of other factors that come into play. You admitted that at the beginning of this video. And now you're failing to make an argument about girl boss movies being a problem because both the movies you mentioned in the beginning were well received by fans. So if people were rejecting the girl boss thing, why would they just do it with money and not with their voices? Why would they just go, I'm not going to go out and spend my money and post something online about it? Because otherwise, what proof do you have of that? You have none.
modern dimension to their formerly outdated characters. How many times have you seen your favourite male heroes brought out of cold storage just so they can be mocked, belittled, outperformed, and ultimately replaced by their idealised, overpowered female superiors? It's all happened so many times now that even the most easygoing, culturally neutral normies are just kind of fucking done with it.
Where is your proof? The financial aspect is one part of a puzzle. It is one part. There's a correlation and causation issue here. How can you prove to me that fans are rejecting girl boss stuff with just looking at sales? You have to show, like, the burden of proof is on you because it's your claim. You have to show us how you know for a fact that that is the reason. And it can't be because of your echo chamber. It has to be something outside of your echo chamber, meaning reviews, statements, articles, editorials, studies, something that shows that people are tired of this specifically for this reason. Spoiler alert, you're not going to do that. You guys never do that because your fans are totally comfortable listening to what you have to say without any proof whatsoever.
It's exhausting and demoralizing, and most people just can't handle it anymore. And at worst, a good chunk of audiences are actively rebelling against it. And what's the end result of all this? Well, in blunt terms, the female action star is fucking dead now. Audiences have been burned so many times now that anytime a new female-led movie
It's funny you keep showing Captain Marvel. That movie made over $1 billion. What about Barbie? Literally a girl boss, Barbie. I mean, this is why your brain dead fans are so fucking out of touch.
shows up, they basically roll their eyes and say, "Oh, here we fucking go, another girl boss." They're unwilling to give any female-led action movies a chance now, to the point where actual good and respectful examples like Furiosa and Ballerina all get lumped together.
So why aren't you fighting back against that narrative? If you believe that these movies are good movies, if you believe these are good films and that they're being unfairly lumped into a type of movie that you don't think works, why not fight a bit more for them? Why not get on streams and fight a bit more? Why not push and get your fans to go out and support movies that show women in a way that you believe is of value? I hate even saying that. It makes me feel icky saying that. But if that's what you truly believe, you'd be fighting for them. But you're not. You are also lumping them into that. By like putting it into this video, you are lumping them into the girl boss narrative because you're saying that they're underperforming because of that narrative. So whether they're actually girl boss movies or not, you're saying that that's what they are perceived to be, and perception is reality. The vibe check stuff is real. So by you putting them into this conversation in any way whatsoever, without any sort of like full pushback, a full-throated pushback, by not doing that, you're lumping them together. So you're contributing to the same issue.
And flush down the same cultural toilet bowl as the watery shite excreted by Disney, Marvel and Amazon. And when I think about it, that really is a shame, because believe it or not, there was once a time when we really did have it all. Go back as recently as the 2000s or even the early 2010s, and we had a whole bunch of established female-led franchises like Resident Evil, Underworld, Tomb Raider, Kill Bill and The Hunger Games.
And you know what? Like, those examples, none of those are different from the movies we're looking at today. None of those are different. They're all powerful women in lead roles. So there's nothing different. I was waiting for you to give me some example that showcases the difference between like what a girl boss is in today's media versus women back then. These examples all showcase women powerful in their own way. Like the narrative of girl boss is just sort of a scapegoat to come after women in modern media. Because you've yet to give me an example of what makes modern movies girl bossy other than being spin-offs of franchises where men were the lead of the franchises in their own separate thing that doesn't affect those primary movies at all. You can still have those primary movies without ever engaging in the spin-offs. So they're forgettable, which is fine, but you're not making a strong case showing the direct difference between these types of films and the ones that you're talking about right now.
And you know what? Nobody fucking complained about them then. There were no boycotts or backlashes or cultural warfare.
Because you guys weren't making content. I have to keep saying this. You guys are the problem. Your media is the problem. You have cultivated an echo chamber of toxic incels who have nothing better to do than complain about women and minorities. That's why that stuff didn't exist. You keep trying to blame it on Hollywood for doing what Hollywood does, but Hollywood has always done this. You guys are the new factor. But it's not really surprising to me that you don't know that, because you're not good at dissecting anything. Everything is surface level to you. So therefore, it doesn't surprise me that you can't look in the mirror and understand that you have contributed to this in a big way.
Raging around them, nobody cared because they existed alongside male-led franchises instead of trying to replace them.
So is Ballerina replacing John Wick, or is John Wick continuing on? Is Furiosa replacing Mad Max, or is Mad Max continuing on? As far as I know, those other franchises were not ended to start a woman or a female-led version of those characters. These are additional stories existing within that world. The same thing with Star Wars. We have a mix of different leads for different types of shows and movies. So, I don't truly understand what it is you're talking about. You've yet to give an example, a modern example, of what you're talking about. Because you said Marvel gets a pass because Marvel has always been sort of a group of films. Like, it's never been one or the other. You gave them a pass earlier. You said that in the beginning. That it's okay for Marvel because Marvel's always been sort of all over the place. But yet, you guys call it the MCU. You guys claim that Marvel used to be all men and now it's women, and that's a problem. But you said earlier in this video that that's what makes it different from these other franchises. So you gave Marvel a pass in this video, even though you and your lot have called it MCU. So here we're talking about two film franchises, John Wick and Mad Max, which you included because two women, where the spinoff franchises did not stop the regular franchises from existing. So you still have yet to give an example of that happening. Matter of fact, even with Indiana Jones, it's been proven that women were a big part of Indiana Jones even back in the day. So that's also a false statement. It's just giving sexism and misogyny. That's all it's giving.
There was enough room for everyone, and there still is today. The problem is that the well has been poisoned to such an extent that it's treated more like a battle to the death that only one side can walk away from, instead of a fun and vibrant genre that encourages new ideas and opportunities.
That's a subjective take. You're acting like it's an objective fact, and it's not. It's a subjective take. That is how you feel about it. And it's not reflected in fans. We've already gone over this. In reviews, people are not reflecting what you're saying. They're not repeating what you're saying. And you can't say, oh, well, these movies are casualties of girl bossness, when you yourself have said, like movies like Furiosa, break away from that. So that should be a sign that, hey, not all these movies are girl bossy, so we're going to give Ballerina a chance. But they didn't, which means you should be fighting for more proper female and women representation in media. You should be fighting for that. But that's not what your channel's about. Your channel's about creating problems with no solutions whatsoever. Solution-based thinking is not something that you do.
One of the fundamental rules of the universe is that every action has a reaction, and if your action is to spend years shitting on male heroes just to elevate low-quality female...
How are they shitting? Give examples, man. How is Furiosa and Ballerina and Captain Marvel, any of these other things, shitting on men? Empowerment of women is about women. The fact that you think that that's affecting men proves that we have an issue with sexism and misogyny, because you are making yourself the center of something again. That's the whole point. When women and marginalized communities want to break away from a certain group and kind of do their own thing, they want to do that so that this other group that has power, this other group that has privilege, is no longer the center of the conversation. And by getting offended that women are doing that in this regard, you are trying to make yourself, once again, make men the center of the conversation. It's not about us. It is about women feeling empowered as women in their own media. We are not a part of that. It is not something that we have to be offended about. It's not something that we feel like is being taken away from us. There's nothing being taken away. They're forging their own path in a direction that they decide to do. That's what this is. So whenever you get offended or upset or triggered or mad that you're not the center of something, it just goes to prove that what they're doing is the right thing. They're doing it because they're trying to break away from all of that oppressive, toxic, sexist, misogynistic bullshit. That's it, man. There's nothing else to really say about it.